Keeper of the Lost Cities Unlocked. Chapter 2. Keith. Okay, for the 10 zillionth time. I'm fine, Keith promised as Elvin snapped his fingers and replaced the glowing blue orb around Keith's head with a neon yellow one. You don't have to keep testing me, especially with balls of super bright light, which were not helping with all of the pounding going on in his brain. The pounding didn't mean anything, by the way. That's why he didn't bother mentioning it. Of course, he had a headache. His mom had just tried to kill him again. Sure, she had claimed it was simply the next part of her evil plan to make him into her own personal super elf, but that was basically the same thing. And she could order Banks Boy and the Flasher Girl with the weird nickname to blast him with as many freaky shadow bolts and light beams as she wanted. It wasn't going to change anything. He still hated his mom. She still planned to destroy her creepy organization. Still had notoriously awesome hair, even if he was probably rocking some major bedhead at the moment. So he was good. Everything was good. Well, maybe not everything. He wasn't a fan of the way Elvin kept blocking him from getting up, because apparently he was supposed to rest for a couple of centuries, and he certainly wasn't enjoying the headache of doom, or how twisty and churny his insides felt. But he didn't mention that either, because he already knew why his spit tasted so sour. His mom, she must have gotten away again. Otherwise, he would have woken up to a whole lot of high-fiving and celebrating. Instead, he had found Fitz and Elvin staring at him with tired eyes and extra crinkly foreheads, and he didn't know what he was so surprised. Things hadn't exactly been going well before he blacked out, given that pretty much everyone on his side was unconscious and his mom had just gotten exactly what she wanted. Honestly, he should have been relieved that he hadn't woken up trapped in a never seen hideout with Mommy Dearest standing outside of his cell. But some tiny part of him had still been hoping his friends would pull off a victory, probably because then whatever his mom had done to him wouldn't matter. Now he was going to have to deal with it and deal with her at the same time, which sounded tiring. He had thought about asking Fitz what went wrong, but he wasn't in the mood to hear about all of the mistakes they had made. Okay, fine. He wasn't in the mood to hear all about all of the mistakes he had caused to everybody to make, because his brilliant plan had turned out to be a little less than brilliant. Apparently, he shared the really bad at scheming gene with his mom, and yet somehow she always found a way to beat him. He couldn't figure out how she kept pulling that off. Was it ruthlessness, like Vespera had droned on and on about it, one of her look, "I'm the queen of all things evil" speeches? Or was it a deeper kind of desperation, or pure random luck? Or was it something more insidious than all of that? Could his mom have built some sort of fundamental flaw into him during her creepy experiment? A way to make sure that her little legacy boy would be just strong enough to do her bidding but not strong enough to take her down? The possibility felt like an angry T-Rex tearing through his already aching brain, and he had to press his arms against his sides to fight the urge to reach up and smack himself. No way did his mom deserve that kind of credit. She wasn't some gene manipulating mastermind. She was an evil, power hungry, unstable murderer playing with things she didn't understand, and whatever she had tried to do to him in Lomno wasn't going to work. It wasn't. He had made sure of that. Plus, he had the moonluck on his side, and Foster was even more amazing than the Black Swan had designed her to be. She was an overachiever like that. In fact, he had bet anything that Sophie was the one who had gotten him safely away from the dwarven capital while he was unconscious. Though maybe if she hadn't had to do that, his mom wouldn't have escaped. There was no way to know, so it was probably better not to wonder about it. He just had to keep fighting and remembering that the defeats they had suffered were mostly a timing issue. After all, his mom had been refining her plan for years and he was stuck playing catch up and he had holes in his memory slowing him down. But he was getting smarter every day and stronger and angrier, so much angrier. And all of that rage was going to keep fueling him while he finished this game once and for all. Until then, he needed to focus on the smaller victories, like the fact that this time all of his friends had made it through safely. That had been the first thing he had asked after he had woken up. If waking up was the right way to describe the process, he hadn't necessarily been asleep. He had been sort of drifting through a strange mental space where past and present, dream and reality all blurred together. He probably should have clung to some of the images his mind had been replaying in case they turned out to be important, but hopefully they were tucked away in his photographic memory, because the only thing he could think about after his vision came into focus was, where's Sophie? Is she okay? According to Elvin, she had been sitting by his side in the healing center for days and had only gone home a few hours earlier because Fitz had convinced her to get a little sleep. Keith might have got choked up hearing that, but he had pretended to cough to make sure no one noticed. Then he had gone through a list with Fitz's name by name, checking that all the other people he cared about had made it out of Lomna without any injuries. And Fitz had assured him that everyone was good. Even shady Max Silverbanks was back living at Tyrigan's house again. Not that Keith necessarily counted Tam as his friend, but he was glad to hear that Tammy Boy hadn't officially turned into an enemy either, mostly because the guy could do some seriously scary stuff when he put his mind to it. Now, if only Keith could get Elvin to stop with all the pointless tests ever. It'd be awesome if Fitz would quit staring at him like he was expecting him to sprout wings and a tail and morph into a gorgodon. Keith could practically feel the worry rippling off both of them in prickly little waves. Actually, no, he had to be imagining that. The only emotions he could feel automatically were Sophie's, well, and the Alicons, and humans, with everyone else. He had to try it in order to take a reading. He also usually needed physical contact unless Sophie was enhancing him, and most of the time he had to guess what people were feeling, since a lot of moods felt the same without context. And thank goodness his empathy worked that way, because Foster's feelings were more than enough for him to handle. Not that he didn't love catching glimpses of the real Miss F instead of the brave face she tried to put on for everybody. But being around Sophie could be intense, particularly when she was worried about something. It also wasn't a whole lot of fun when her heart got all pitter pattery, though that might be changing. Foster hadn't told him about anything for certain, but he had sure felt a whole lot of heartache when he had asked what was going on between her and the Fitzstub. She also hadn't corrected him when he had said he was sorry, but which he shouldn't be happy about. He absolutely 100% should not be glad that someone he cared about was experiencing any kind of emotional pain. To someone's actually. But if he was honest, he wasn't necessarily sad. He glanced at his best friend, knowing it definitely wasn't the right time to grill him about troubles in Fitzfieland, and even if it was, that was the kind of conversation he should stay far, far away from. For lots of practical, let's not turn this into a huge mess of drama reasons. But he couldn't seem to stop himself from blurting out, I'm surprised Foster isn't here by now. I figured you'd do that team cognates forever thing and telepathically tell her it's time to come yell at me for breaking my promises to stay away from Lomro. Actually, I did, Fitz said, fidgeting with the end of his tunic. I'm sure she'll be here in a second. And wham! A giant gut punch of feelings hit Keith out of nowhere. Sadness, nervousness, regret, loneliness, plus a hefty dash of anger. And as much as Keith didn't want anything to be different after everything, he had to admit that the emotions weren't his. He could feel them zinging through the air, coming straight from Fitz. So, how's the nausea? Elvin asked, raising one of his eyebrows as he snapped his fingers and surrounded Keith with a bubble of purple light. Hmm, I guess I should also be asking how the headache's going, and think very carefully about how you answer. Remember, I can see your cells right now, so there's no use pretending that everything's normal. I know what you want that to be true, and believe me, I wish it were. But what happened to you isn't something you can just pretend away. That's why I need you to be honest with me, so I can figure out the best means to help you. We are in this together, and I promise I'm going to do everything in my power to get you through it. I just need you to cooperate. He held Keith's stare as something heavy crashed against Keith's senses. Concern. Usually a tough emotion to recognize because it felt like a bunch of different things. But Keith didn't even have to try to translate the feeling, which made him want to curl into a little ball and pull the blankets over his head. Instead, he leaned back against his pillow and propped up his feet. If he was going to have to deal with whatever this was, he wanted to figure it out on his own without people fussing over him and asking all kinds of personal questions or freaking out about what it all might mean. So he twisted his lips into what he hoped was convincing smirk and told Elvin, I appreciate the pep talk, Doctor worries too much, but really, I'm fine. I mean, yeah, I'm a little queasy and I have a slight headache, but wouldn't you if you hadn't eaten in 2 days? Or has it been three? Elvin sighed. Actually, it's probably closer to 4 at this point. Okay, 4, Keith corrected, trying hard not to wince. But almost 4 days unconscious in healing center, that was a Foster level of almost dying. He'd have to make sure he returned the favor the next time he saw Mom of the Year, or finish her off entirely. In the meantime, he needed to convince Elvin to let him go home because he really wanted to talk to his dad, which kind of felt like proof that his mom actually had broken his brain. But his dad was an empath, so maybe Lord Jerkface would know what was happening with Keith's ability, especially since he had also been a part of the creepy experiment in the beginning. Keith was trying not to think about that. He was trying not to think about lots of things. He just needed answers, even if he despised where they'd be coming from and dreaded the horrible bargains he'd have to make with Lord Jerkface to get them. And the sooner he got those answers, the better. So he was careful to keep his voice perky as he told Elvin, no wonder I have a headache. I mean, seriously, what's a guy gotta do to get a meal around here? You think the near death experience would count for at least a few snacks or something? Guess I'll have to head home and see that weird food Daddy Dearest is making for dinner. He thinks he's some sort of culinary genius, but trust me, he's not. Elvin crossed his arms. Okay, if that's how you want to play this, I can have Fitz head to the mentor's cafeteria and get you some butter blast. I know how much you love those. Keith did love butter blast, but the thought of all the rich, sweet goo made his stomach turn a few black backflips, and he had to lock his jaw to stop himself from hurling all over the blankets. That's what I thought, Elvin said, shaking his head. You're not fooling anyone, Keith. So how about we try this again? On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad are the nausea and the headache? A 2, Keith tried, but even he didn't believe himself. Time to switch to his ultimate defense mechanism. Okay, fine, maybe a 4, but that's still not a big deal. And if you don't believe me, check out Bullon over there. He nudged his chin toward the purple eyed banshee curled up in the corner. He is so not interested in me right now. In fact, I swear, if he could talk, he'd be like. He shifted his voice down to a couple of octaves and added a hint of rasp as he said, Yo, dudes, this guy is super boring. Get him out of my healing center so I can get back to snoring. That's what you think a banshee would sound like? Fitz asked, exactly the way Keith hoped he would. Humor made the perfect distraction. Hey, not everyone can have the fancy whacker accent, Keith said, switching to an impersonation of Fitz's crisp voice. But you can't stop us from trying. He nailed the intonation so perfectly that it almost felt wrong. He had done hundreds of awesome impressions over the years, but this was something else. This felt like he had channeled some sort of deep instinct as he had said the words. Almost like, nope. He definitely wasn't going to let his mind go there because there was no way that was possible. None, less than none, negatively infinite. Care to explain what just made you grind your teeth and turn so pale? Elvin asked, snapping his fingers and switching to a bright orange light that felt like it was shredding Keith's skull. If you must know, Keith said, clearing his throat to make sure his voice sounded like him again. I'm bummed that no one noticed the awesome rhyme I just pulled off. The Black Swan could learn a thing or two from me if they ever go back to a whole mysterious note strategy. Anyone else miss those days? All the suspense, all the intrigue, all the nice try, Elvin cut in. But you're not going to distract me. He adjusted his glasses and narrowed his eyes as the light around Keith blared brighter. Based on what I'm seeing, your nausea has to be at least 8, and I'd put the headache at 9. Keith would have put them both at 10, maybe even 11. But if he admitted that, he'd never get out of the healing center. Even if you're right, he argued, and I'm not saying you are, you're missing my point, which was that Bullhorn's not even a tiny bit worried about me, and overreacting is pretty much what banshees live for. So whatever you think you're seeing is just a misunderstanding. That's all it was, he told himself. It had to be. But to be safe, he was never going to impersonate anyone ever again. He also wished he could block the stinging waves of worry that were now slamming into him from both Elvin and Fitz. And there was a new emotion scraping the edge of his senses, coming from someone who must have been somewhere behind him. He realized it was impatience, right? As much too familiar voice called out. A pretty little blondie needs to get back here. She is the only one who can make Lord Funky Hair cooperate. Keith had been hoping to avoid that voice for at least a couple of more hours or days, maybe a year or two. But sadly, he turned and there was Ro, leaning against the doorway in the healing center. She gave a mocking wave before reaching up to adjust one of her choppy pigtails, which she must have dyed again, because her hair was now the same vivid red that she had painted her claws. It looked like fresh spilled blood, and a pointed toothed smile promised lots of gleeful revenge. But Keith could feel all of Rose's emotions whirling toward him like spinning daggers. Anger, annoyance, a tiny wisp of relief, which freaked him out more than the others. Any goodwill Ro might be feeling toward him had to be buried deep. All right, you can drop the tough guy act, Ro told him, stalking closer. You're way too sweaty and shaky right now to pull it off. Plus, you've got this frantic look in your eyes, like the trapped baby bunny. So it's time to come clean to a nice elfie doctor and let him give you a bunch of this weirdo medicines, okay? He's also more than welcome to subject you to any and all treatments that involve melting off your skin. Counter offer, Keith said, throwing back his covers. I go home and. Nope. Rose shoved him back onto the cot and reached into her breastplate, pulling out a tiny glass vial that looked like it was filled with curdled snot. If you insist on being difficult, we can try this another way. I was planning to use this for your first punishment, and you should note my use of the word first there, Funky Hair, because believe me, I have big plans for you. But I'll happily change things up and force a few of these amoebas down your throat right now if. No amoebas, Elvin interrupted, snatching the vial out of Rose's hand with some fairly impressive reflexes. You're cute if you think I'm not going to steal that back in about 3 seconds, Ro warned. And I'm sure I'll break a lot of things in the process. And you're cute if you think I don't have an elixir that'll knock you out with a tiny whiff, Elvin countered, patting the satchel slug across his shoulder. Ro cocked her head to study him. Not sure I'll believe you. You should, since it'll also make you lose control of your bladder, he warned. Yeah, I'm going to need a vial of whatever that is, Keith chimed in when Ro backed away from Elvin. Not going to happen. Elvin stuffed the vial he had confiscated from Ro into his satchel and latched it closed. I'll give this back to you later. Well, depending on what it is. But in the meantime, I need you to promise me that you lay off the microbial punishments. I can't have you giving Keith anything that could mess with my readings until he's back to normal. Keith knew that was his cue to insist that he already was back to normal, but A few weeks free from Ro's nasty microbes was kinda worth staying silent. Ro heaved a giant sigh. Fine, I suppose I can see the logic behind that. How about a good old fashioned death threat, then? Elvin blocked her from unsheathing one of the knives strapped to her waist. I'm sure that won't be necessary. Keith's ready to start cooperating now, isn't he? Keith tapped his chin. That doesn't sound like me. It doesn't, Ro agreed, wrenching out of Elvin's grip. But Elvin caught her wrist and twisted her arm away from her weapon with a move that made Keith wonder if Foxfire's physician had gotten some battle training. Sooner or later, Keith's going to realize that fighting me, my help, only makes everything worse, Elvin assured Ro as he let her go. Including the symptoms he's trying to pretend aren't there, he turned to Keith. Your nausea and headache won't go away on their own, no matter how hard you try to ignore them. In fact, they're going to get progressively worse. So why don't you tell me what I need to know so I can get you some medicines before you pass out or throw up all over my nice, clean healing center? See, but a vomit fest sounds kind of awesome, doesn't it? Ooh, you guys could join in. Who's with me? He held up his hand for a high five, but everyone left him hanging. Boo, you're no fun. Seriously, I'm fine. If you say fine one more time, Ro interrupted, I'll gruesome dodge your scrawny butt into submission. Keith smirked. Bring it on, princess. I'm enough. Elvin dragged his palm down his face. Once again, Ro, I can't let you do anything that might affect Keith's recovery. But don't look so smug there, Keith. I have plenty of ways to make your life very unpleasant if you insist on being so stubborn. Ro jumped up and down, clapping. Please tell me they involve ooze. Ooze sounds good to me, Keith assured her. But I'll take mine to go. That way I can ruin my dad's fancy rugs. Or maybe... Oh, just stop, Fitz snapped, and Keith assumed he was talking to Ro, since the Orge princess was blocking Keith from getting up again. But apparently, Fitz had zero BFF loyalty, because he turned to Elvin and said, Keith's freaking out right now because he can read all of our emotions without trying to, and without needing any kind of enhancing or contact. And I guess he's translating them way easier than he usually does too. He also ranked his headache and nausea at a 10 or an 11. Keith blinked. You? Yeah, Fitz cut him off. I read your thoughts without your permission. I'm sorry, but we both know you were never going to tell us what was really going on, and Elvin needs to know. So he shrugged like it wasn't that big of a deal, but Keith could feel Fitz's sore guilt swirling through the air. Good, Keith sighed. Come on, don't look at me like that. You think I wanted to hear what you are thinking? Are you still listening? Keith asked, trying not to wonder how long Fitz had been eavesdropping, or what else he might have heard, as he let his mind flood with an abundance of particularly creative insults. Fitz tore a hand through his boringly perfect hair. I get why you're mad, but I'm only trying to help. I know what you're going through. Right, you totally know what it's like to have your mom do deadly experiments on you, Keith muttered. I must have forgotten that part of the Wacker history. Maybe not, Fitz conceded, but I do know what it's like to have a traitor in the family. And I also remember how scary it is to wake up in one of those cots after being brutally attacked. Just like I know how hard it is to talk about what's wrong, because it feels like you're admitting that never seen beat you. But they only win if you keep pretending everything's normal, because you end up making the damage permanent. I'm not damaged. You're right. That's the wrong word. Fitz blew out a breath. Look, all I'm trying to say is that I wouldn't be walking right now if I hadn't let Elvin help me. I probably wouldn't even be alive. So I want to make sure you get the help you need. And you do need it, Keith. No matter what you want to believe. But accepting help doesn't make you weak. It just means you're taking care of yourself.